All this extreme supercar action is proudly brought to you by G&H Transport. We're in the friendly city, the windy city. It's Quebec at the Aldo Scribanti circuit for round 4 of the G&H Transport Extreme Supercars, and the crowds have come out. They certainly are a firm favourite amongst the youngsters in these crowds, and I think we're going to be in for more action as we've seen all season long so far in the Extreme Supercars. As they come out on track for race 1, we caught up with a man making a welcome return to racing in South Africa, Jimmy Orby.
G&H Supercars, welcome to the series, Jimmy Orby. We haven't seen you for a long time.
Thank you. Yes, it has been a couple of years since I've been in a race car, but I'm loving every minute of it. The guys from the MJR Motorsport helped us with an Audi R8 to ride this weekend, and I've been loving every single lap. It's crazy. It's just great to be in a race car again, and these cars are awesome.
And Aldo Scribanti hasn't changed a great deal for you.
Yeah, it's still exactly the same as what it was. But you know, when you haven't been on a racetrack for so long, and you get back into it, it's crazy that the track's very well kept. It's great.
And leading the Audi brigade is Maurice Jackson in the MJR R8.
We're trying our best. As you can see, we've got 3 Audis here today, 2 GT4s and 1 GT3, and yeah. So the new guy are learning. Joe is learning the track. He's getting good time so far, and yeah, they are happy with the car.
Expect a big fight at the front end amongst the Lamborghinis, one of them being Jonathan du Toit in the Trans-Africa Racing Stradale Motorsport Hurricane.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've had cars running like clockwork. I can thank the team. It's fantastic. I've had some really good races with Franco. I mean, obviously he's got that monstrous Porsche. So I mean, like quick around the corners, but a little bit slower down the straight, so it makes it a bit challenging to pass. But yeah, I mean, we had a great race at Swartkops, and looking forward to another good weekend. And I mean, I guess it's not only going to be Franco, because I mean the other Scribantes, Silvio and Aldo are here too. Silvio's got a sister car to mine, so in this last session he chased me around the whole session. So I think we're going to have a very good race tomorrow.
Cars on track now for race number 1, but as we've seen, this season has been pretty spectacular. Let's go and have a look at a recap of what's happened in the G&H Transport Extreme Supercars so far. We opened up 2023's championship at round 1 for Swartkops, and that was at the Passion for Speed Festival. A nice field of cars came out to play. A couple of new cars involved in the mix as well. Some development being done by the Stradale Motorsport team on the Mercedes-Benz AMG. They'll be piloting that in the 9-hour. But as always, Extreme Supercars at the Passion for Speed Festival is a highlight of that weekend, and was certainly as we got into the thick of it big time. The Aston Martin was in there as well, and great to see Zolila Letlaka bringing that machine out early on. But the action out front was where it was all happening, as Arunjis and his teammate Jonathan du Toit put on a show. It was a big turn of events as well, coming through from the Porsche, and a new Porsche colour from Scribanti's racing stable, with Franco Scribanti piloting his new 997, the General. In the mid-pack, as always, action aplenty, and it was nice to see a nice array of cars as well, with Big Jimbo Giannaccaro bringing up the tail end of the field in the Lamborghini Trofeo. Out front, Arunjis was the man to beat, and he was holding fort. We kind of expected to see the Porsche at the front end with the additional bit of pace it had, but both of the Stradale Motorsport and Trans-Africa Racing machines were keeping at bay, and the Porsche had some work to do as they're coming into the closing stages of the first heat. It was not going to be easy for Scribanti to find a way through, and Jonathan du Toit was making it very difficult for him. In fact, we kind of expected to see the Porsche at the front end. He wasn't able to get through on the 2 cars out front. Behind that, all the class battles were starting to rage as well, and great to see some newcomers into the field and some old contenders going at it. Into the mix now, and with that, we saw some big action expected, and this is where Scribanti was looking to try and come through and capitalise on the fact that backmarkers might be a big factor here. Inside lines at all the corners and going past the AMG Driving Academy, it was great to see an AMG on circuit with Charles Arunjis in full flight. But there was no answer coming from his teammate, because his teammate was in a huge defensive battle trying to keep out not 1 but 2 Porsches as they went down into the final corner. Arunjis coming through for the victory, and a debut win there for him in the Mercedes.
Charles Arunjis, debut win for a brand new car. You're going to be thrilled.
No, we're over the moon, really, Dave.
So the spec of these cars, GT3s, so you can drive them internationally and you can race them here.
That's basically the thing. It's internationally recognized class. They showed today just the base is so quick, it's so fast. I mean, from here we can go and do a 6-hour endurance race now. That's how great these cars are. So they're super reliable and super nice to drive.
Oh, great story. Good luck for the second race. Jono, good luck for the second race.
Yeah, thank you.
Hopefully you can pull one over your teammate and keep him out.
That'll be the plan. I think we need to work together to try and get one over Franco. So that'll be objective number 1. But yeah, no, good result.
That objective was achieved in race number 1. And also, it was great to see a superb new 997 Porsche in the hands of Roy Obery. As the lights went out, more action expected, and it was going to be a huge fight again between the Porsche and the Lamborghini. This time out, though, Scribanti got the whole shot, and he tried to hang on right the way through. Mid-pack battles continued as always, and some superb battles there, with Nicky Dix getting involved in the mix there with the Porsche, and going side by side with Ricky Giannacaro. Ricky Giannacaro was waiting for his new car to come on board as well. He's expecting to get a Hurricane in the very near future, and was pushing hard to try and get that machine to the front end. Front end, though, was all about Scribanti pulling away now, and whatever Jonathan du Toit and Charles Orange were wanting, it hadn't quite worked out for him. Nice new car as well in the hands of Gianni Giannacaro, piloting a new GTR 34, and that Nissan was looking pretty tasty from the word go. A little bit of development still to be done on it, but once he got it up to pace, I think he might just be ahead, and will be ahead by the time they get to the next round of that car in front of him, the Bucket List Racing Dodge Viper. Porsches in the mix as always. It's kind of what we expect to see when we get these kind of cars in full flight. And at the opening round here, it certainly proved to be an amazing event at the end of the day. Franco Scribanti pushing hard to try and stay ahead of the two Trans-Africa Racing and Stradale Motorsport boys. And it wasn't going to be easy. Jonathan du Toit found some late race pace and all of a sudden closed in. In the background though, problems for the Aston Martin of Zolile Letlaka, and Exo ended up in the kitty litter. There was no overtaking up into turn 5 until they cleared that Aston Martin, but by that stage it was all about Scribanti, and he was clean and clear at the front end with a decent enough margin to hold off the Lambo and the Mercedes-Benz. Came down to the line and down to the wire again, and this time out it was Scribanti on the top step of the podium taking the victory at one of the opening round races of the Extreme Supercars. Du Toit came through for second and Oranges was third. We then headed to Cape Town for the second round at the Killarney International Raceway. And down in Cape Town, of course, a couple of local supporters came to join and jumped in with a couple of Ferraris. The Auto's Angel boys were there as well, and there were also a couple of other Lamborghinis, with Modak jumping into the mix as well in another Trofeo. At the front, Oranges jumped into an R8 Audi and was taking on Scribanti into turn number 2. As the rest of the pack were fighting their own little battles, Davy Olivier joined the party too in a Porsche. That Wild Gin Rose Porsche is always a fast car, particularly down here at his home circuit. But the fastest car at the front end was all about Du Toit. Du Toit was just showing the rest of this pack the power and might of that Lamborghini Hurricane. Auto's Angel Marcel Angel was in the mix too, and his 488 Ferrari. Good to see the prancing horse making a welcome return, and a couple of them thrown into the mix there to take on the Bulls and the Porsches. But, the Porsche that was expected to be at the front was not having it his own way, and side-by-side action down into the final corner saw Oranges diving through and forcing Scribanti back to third place. So it's game on, as we saw in Swartkops, and they were not going to make it easy for Scribanti. Angel had his own battles and fighting with Gianni Giannacaro for 4 and 5. You can see coming down on the breaking point, Gianni Giannacaro probably not having the top end speed of that 488 Ferrari, but was certainly not going to give it up without a fight. Oranges and Scribanti going at it, and they kept at it all the way through. It was going to be an epic finish to this one between the Audi R8 and that Porsche 997. Jimbo Giannacaro was slightly higher up than what he had been in the first round as well, and just ahead of Joseph Ellerine in the Audi R8 GT4. And the mid-packs and BMWs thrown into the mix as well. It was fantastic to see them too, as they started to hunt things down there in amongst the Lamborghinis and Porsches in that mid-pack Class C, D and E battle, and the GT3 battle also heating up. Niels Modak is always a fast man at his home circuit, and in a previously owned G&H Transport Racing stable Lamborghini Trofeo, he has certainly got some superb pace. The pace eventually picked up at the end of the race though from the Porsche, and Scribanti found his way to the front end to get ahead of Jonathan du Toit. He would hang on to take the victory in the first heat of the second round of the G&H Transport Extreme Supercars. Flag out Scribanti from du Toit as Modak and Blunden headed into turn 1 for one more lap. Brilliant stuff there from the Extreme Supercars, and the Cape Town crowd was certainly in for epic battles all the way through. And how awesome is it to see almost 30 supercars headed down towards Holzhoek as we start the final heat here in Cape Town. Whole shot came from Scribanti, and it looked like he might just have the pace, because all of a sudden there was also a turnaround coming out of local man Marcel Angel in the Ferrari. And Angel definitely wanted a chance there to be at the front end. He'd now changed seats and of course given the car over to his son Dane for the final heat, and Dane was not holding back amongst those usual contenders in the front end. He had nothing to lose and was definitely throwing them Ferrari in amongst them without any worries whatsoever. He was definitely looking for a chance to be at the front end, and he was looking for a chance to try and get to the front and beat the usual contenders. Not going to be an easy task there for anybody, particularly when you've got this man in this kind of form. Brilliant stuff coming out of Scribanti as he led things out to keep it all honest at the front end as they went into the final heat. In the mid-pack, the battles continued. And those battles were between Porsches and BMWs. Audi's thrown into the mix there. Great to see Kwanda Mokoena in his Audi fighting with Joseph Ellery. The two youngsters in those GT4 spec cars were looking very good. Kwanda was going to go on to international duties, and Joseph Ellery would stick around for the next couple of championship rounds in the G&H Transport Extreme Supercars. Dane Angel definitely found the pace here in the closing stages and moved the Ferrari up into the top three, ahead of the R8 of Arungis, who seemed to have a little bit of problems in the closing stages of the final heat. Jonathan du Toit was trying hard but could not match the pace of the Scribanti Porsche out front. Ricky Jonakara looking for a way onto the outside of turn 2, being forced wide by a couple of those back markers, and certainly not where he wants to be. That little Lamborghini got some work to do to get it to the front end, and that's exactly what they'd be doing down at G&H Transport, and eventually it would pay dividend. Into the closing stages, and Scribanti had done everything to perfection to stay out front and ahead of his championship rival, Jonathan du Toit. Looks like the General might be the car in question this year, and the car possibly to beat. We've seen it beaten once. What would Jonathan du Toit do at the final round and at the next round of this championship as they headed in to the closing stages of Cape Town's round? Welcome back to more action from the G&H Transport Extreme Supercars. Round 3, we headed back to Swartkops, and it was for round number 2 of the Extreme Festival. So the Extreme Supercars back at the home of Extreme Festival, the Swartkops International World of Motoring. At the front end, the battle continued once again between du Toit and Scribanti, and who was going to have what it takes here this weekend to beat each other out. Gianni Jonakara had certainly found some more pace in that GTR and was throwing it around with no worries whatsoever in amongst those top two. And the GT3 contender definitely meant business, with du Toit just ahead of him. In the mid-pack, you see Charles Arungis coming through there as well, and also looking at a couple of changes in that team, because Arnie Nevling was in the R8 and Arungis was back in a Lamborghini Trofeo, fighting hard with one of the BMW M Performance Racing Series machines, and all of a sudden Rick Leroux was involved in that mix too. So there was going to be some battles that weren't contended initially in the first 2 rounds of the championship, and they're certainly going to be sorted out here at Swartkops. Across the line, and Scribanti continued to lead. Du Toit was right there with him, giving him a little bit of a run for his money, just putting the pressure on here and there and waiting for a possible mistake coming out of the Porsche. That's not usually the case once Scribanti is out front, but you never know. Gianni Jonakara maintained 3rd place with Chris Budnick in the Bucketless Racing Dodge Viper on his tail. That Viper V10 is an awesome car, and at Swartkops it is a very, very hot contender, particularly near the front end of a supercar field. Front end though being dominated, as you can see, just controlling things with that little extra pace along the straightaway. Scribanti kept du Toit at bay, and he kept it right the way through the first heat. As du Toit came close in the twisty bits, but on the straights, that's where the Porsche had the additional grunt. Arnie Nevling was pushing hard, trying to come through here to try and do things at the front end, but not quite on the same kind of pace as Charles Arungis was in. And of course, with Arungis dropping down and trying to get as many points in the GT3 class in that Lamborghini, it's all about that. Ricky Jonakara was now in the new Lamborghini. Great to see some return of ex-competitors from the supercars, with the Jabez jumping in 2 Lotus Exesias. Marius Jackson was just ahead of them in the MJR machine, and that Audi R8 has certainly turned around its pace. But now with Ricky Jonakara in his new Hurricane, he definitely had the pace to run with Marius Jackson and give him a run for his money in that GT3 battle. Out front, A+ was dominated again, and these two are just showing the rest of the field how to do things in extreme supercars. There's not really an answer to du Toit or to Scribanti. Jimbo Jonakara, as always, flying the flag high for G&H Transport and running well in Class D. But his son Gianni was about to catch him and pass him and just get up into a potential win here for the GT3 category. Final corner, and Scribanti hung on only just, because right in the closing stages the toy was looking that dangerous. In fact, he ran over the new little speed bump on the outside and the kiddie litter and did some front end damage to that Lamborghini. So a little bit of work to do now for Stradale and Trans-Africa Racing before we got into race number 2. The pace car pulled off, and it was Scribanti to dictate the pace, but that inside line with the Lamborghini on it is always a danger factor, particularly if the toy is behind the wheel of that Lambo on the front row. Would he have what it takes to get the whole shot? We'd wait and see as they headed down into turn 1. No, the drop came from the Porsche, and he led things out down towards turn 2. Joseph Ellerine having another fantastic outing down in the GT4 spec R8. And the usual contenders went at it side by side, including Jabir, who was pushing hard there to get through there on Nicky Dix. Behind that, lining up and waiting to pounce, was Ricky Giannaccaro. No worries at all here for the General, leading things out over his arch rival in this championship, Jonathan du Toit. Du Toit was making it a little bit more difficult for him. He was a lot more close to the front end and looking for a chance to get through on that Porsche to take the lead. Jackson, Giannaccaro, epic battle there as well, and it raged almost the whole way through. They were just behind the Porsche there of Nicky Dix, and Nicky Dix just keeping them honest as they went down into the final corner. The Stormbreaker Hurricane looking good now in amongst the back markers, coming up on the back end of Ulisana in the Z4 BMW, also out of G&H Transport's racing stable. He would just be looking for a chance now for that Porsche to get behind him. A little bit of smoke coming out of the Porsche in the closing stages was a big concern, and the marshals and the COC were watching that frantically to see if there was going to be any issues on that Porsche. I'm sure the team were looking as well. Didn't seem to slow or hinder until we got up into turn 7, and all of a sudden that was an opportunity for Jonathan du Toit to pounce, and some more white smoke coming out of the back of that Porsche was a big concern. That white smoke turned into a massive flame, and the Porsche caught alight heading across the start finish line. Radio onto Franco to tell him the car was on fire, and he tried to find the nearest out point at a marshal where they can get an extinguisher to it. That was just outside of turn number 1. He pulled to the side of the circuit, the marshals pounced and were able to get that Porsche out, but the red flag came out, and that was the end of the race day at Swartkops for the G&H Transport Extreme Supercars, with Jonathan du Toit taking the victory. The marshals doing a superb job to try and limit the amount of damage the fire might have caused on the General from Scribanti's racing stable. The rest of the cars pulling to the sideline. Join us after the break for more action from round 4 at Aldo Scribanti. Welcome back now for round 4 action of the Extreme Supercars, proudly brought to you by G&H Transport. Cars on track, and we're on board with Marius Jackson, waiting for the start now of race number 1. It's Silvio Scribanti who's on the front row ahead of Jonathan du Toit. And the local man in the Chems Lamborghini Hurricane is going to look to try and set the pace. We're on board with Jackson as we go off. The lights go out, and here we go down towards turn 1. And it is Silvio Scribanti getting the whole shot by the looks of things. His brother Aldo going to tuck in behind. Oh, yes, he is. Aldo Scribanti getting a superb start. Scribanti going to try and go with him. The return of the AMG Mercedes-Benz with Charles Laurentiis at the wheel is definitely a big factor to take into account, and the true Trans-Africa Racing boys have been outgunned not only by their arch rival Scribanti, but by his 2 cousins as well, both Silvio and Aldo. Just before the race, we caught up with Jimbo Giannaccaro from G&H Transport to find out why he'd converted his Lamborghini Trofeo into 2-wheel drive.
Yes, we trying. It's the first time ever I'm driving it on a 2-wheel drive. And at the moment, it looks like it's the answer. We'll see later on, but definitely I found a huge difference.
So taking that prop shaft off the front and turning into a rear-wheel drive is working well for Jimbo Giannaccaro. Things working well here for Silvio. How's this rear-facing camera of his as he pulls away from Aldo? Aldo under a bit of pressure there from Jonathan du Toit. It's Lamborghini Hurricanes 1, 2 and 3 on circuit. What has happened to Scribanti in the Porsche? He's behind them and doesn't seem to have an answer to the bulls out here. That Porsche just has got great top-end speed, as we've seen at every single circuit. Running slightly wide there, maybe having a little bit of issues. Remember, that car has just been rebuilt in record time after that massive fire at Swartkops, and maybe there's still a couple of gremlins to be sorted out. Marius Jackson is having a fantastic outing in the MJR Audi R8. He's just behind Arungi's in the Mercedes-Benz AMG. And all of these GT3 spec cars at the front end just show the prowess and the absolute amazing field that we've got here in the G&H Transport Extreme Supercars. Toy putting the pressure onto Aldo. Aldo circling it up and not giving any room. He knows exactly where to place that car. This is his home circuit, so it's going to make it a bit more difficult for Toy. Toy goes late on the brakes into Dunlop and squeezes him out. Oh, that was brilliant stuff. That's Aldo's point of view as you see Toy just getting past. Oh, that is such a nice shot there. It's basically a body cam there on Aldo Scribanti looking at that steering wheel as he came across the line. And he's now under pressure. Looks like there might be a bit of a problem there on the second of those Scuderia Scribanti Lamborghinis. And Aldo's dropped behind his cousin Franco. Porsche versus Audi at the mid-pack. And that Porsche is really, really good. That's Mo Mia in the number 69 Toys R Us Porsche fighting it out with Jimmy Orby. As we mentioned earlier on, Jimmy Orby in racing for a long, long time and back in the saddle for a welcome return. Problems for the Giannacaros. You can see Ricky Giannacaro being pushed back into the pits and a little off-track excursion there for Gianni in the new livery. That bisque machine, unfortunately, just ran wide out of Dunlop and put it onto the dirt. This car's not run wide at all. Almost all race long has been pin perfect. And it's going to be the first victory there for Silvio Scribanti as he joins the G&H Transport Extreme Supercars. After a long time out, he beats out Jonathan Dutoy, who will maintain his lead in the championship after race 1. Scribanti from Dutoy, Aranjis beats out Franco Scribanti, Aldo eventually in 5th, Marius Jackson ahead of Gianni Giannacaro, Mo Mia, and Jimmy Orby beating out Joseph Ellerin for the top 10.
I was stuck in 3rd behind Aldo, pushing hard. I was a little bit quicker through Hanger, so I tried one lap, there wasn't enough space. Next lap I was right on him, and then I eventually had to force the issue into the last corner. And then, I had to put my head down and try to chase down Silvio, but wasn't enough time. But hopefully in race 2.
Let's get Silvio's comments on his first win.
Had a fairly good start, got away. I see Aldo managed to jump from 3rd to 2nd and held Jonathan up for a couple of laps. It allowed me to get away. I got like a 6-7 second gap. And I just held it from there, till the finish. So it really went according to plan.
Let's see if it does the same now in race number 2 with Scribanti back on pole position. Looking for a chance to go for the double here. As the lights go out, he's going to be followed by Charles Aranjis looking to get through there on Jonathan Dutoy. We're on board with a Mega Fiber and MJR Audi of Marius Jackson heading towards turn number 1. And as they get on the brakes, he tucks in behind Franco Scribanti as we go aerial material from our drone shot at turn 1. Nice aerial shot there of all the cars coming through. A couple of cars not making it back on track with some damage, but we'll keep an eye on the battle at the front end. Aldo Scribanti is behind and a little bit further behind than what he was in race number 1. He was in 2nd place by the time they came out of the S's. This time out, he's down in 4th. Trying to close down on Aranjis. He's ahead of Franco, though. That's an important factor. And all of a sudden, the MJR machine of Marius Jackson under pressure from Gianni Giannacaro. Gianni Giannacaro had that off-track excursion, as we saw. It looks like they've done all the tweaking that they need to get that R34 of his working a bit better. Jimbo at the back there, of course, fighting with his teammate. And Joseph Ellerin and Jimmy Orby having an epic dice amongst the R8 GT4 spec machines. It is all about Silvio Scribanti. And has Jonathan Dutoy got anything to catch the back end? He spoke about the fact that he ran out of laps. He's got enough laps in hand now and no traffic ahead of him to worry about to catch Silvio Scribanti initially. But Scribanti, as you heard, all went according to plan. And it looks like it's going according to plan again here for race number 2. Not quite for Franco, though. I think what Franco Scribanti is doing here is possibly looking at the long game and looking at how he can just get as many points in the bag as possible, having not had a full 100% Porsche behind him this weekend. There's still a couple of gremlins that need to be sorted out, I'm sure, after that massive fire that happened at Swartkops. The 2 Audis at the back just leading things out there, and Jimmy Giannacaro, of course, will be the last car on track there in his Lamborghini. There it is, rear-wheel drive, not all-wheel drive this time in the Trofeo. But he seemed to be a lot happier after that interview we caught up with him in race number 1. So maybe this is the way to go for Jimbo. He'll be looking for a victory in his class. And being on track is the most important thing when it comes to consistency and winning championships. Down onto the breakers once again for turn number 1. And the first 4 or 5 cars now equidistant apart. Not really any challenges coming from anybody at this point. But we are looking to possibly see what happens in that final stage of this race. At MJR Audi looking very good. And I can tell you something, this is a huge turnaround for Marius Jackson, bringing himself back into contention for that GT3 championship. No worries at all here for Silvio, though, as he comes into the hairpin, coming up on some of the back markers. And that might just help Jonathan out ever so slightly. And maybe even Charles Orangis can close that gap down. You can see also new livery on that car compared to the first time we saw it out when it was all in Hulk green. This time running in those colours that they ran in the Kyle Army 9 hour. Coming up on Momia, the Toys R Us Porsche. Nice initiative that Momia and Brendan Kelly did on the weekend too, getting some youngsters to go and seek out their favourite drivers' autographs, and Momia giving them 1,000 Rand vouchers from Toys R Us in lieu of the fact that they went out hunting for those autographs. Great job from both of those guys. I tell you something, a fantastic job from Aldo Scribanti, and hopefully he's going to be sticking around for more action in the G&H Transport Extreme Supercars when they head into the next round. And it'll be great to have him and Aldo, I beg your pardon, back in the full flight of G&H Transport Extreme Supercars. This car is certainly a car to beat, particularly at its home circuit. Jonathan Dutour was also looking at this stage to consolidate as many points as possible, and remember, he would hang on to the championship lead heading to the next round with a second place here today. On board as he heads across the line and looks for that checkered flag, there's a happy man. And the Semza Scuderia Scribanti Hurricane wins out over the Trans-Africa Racing and Stradale Hurricane. Third place going to Charles Orangis in the Mercedes-Benz AMG. Franco beat out his cousin Aldo for 4 and 5, with Jackson in 6, beating out Gianni Giannacaro, Jimmy Orby, Joseph Ellerine, and Jimbo Giannacaro making up the top 10. Let's chat to Joe Ellerine.
Yeah, obviously it's a new track. There's going to be a lot of challenges and keeping up with these guys because they're really quick. But I think we've managed it well, and we had a good weekend.
We had a great weekend's racing in Extreme Supercars. The crowd loved it, and they're going to love it even more when we head to East London Grand Prix Circuit on the 22nd of July. Come and join us there for all the action from G&H Transport Extreme Supercars. All this Extreme Supercar action is proudly brought to you by G&H Transport.